and I'm a feminist. Honestly, I believe that we should all be feminists. But before you X out of this video for fear of me trying to convert you into an Amazonian warrior who burns bras and who dances on the graves of men as a hobby, I want to let you know that that's not what feminism is. Feminism is equality of all people. Equality between men and women, regardless of gender, of race, of skin color. The list is endless. So all those negative thoughts you had about feminism, they're all wrong. Feminism is simple. I've been a feminist for as long as I can remember, so I should know. I've done my research and I got the t-shirt. I chose to do this speech because the brilliant Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie convinced me through her speech that truly we should all be feminists. I chose to do this speech because I believe that gender inequality is the #1 problem and should be our #1 priority. Yes, it is true. There are millions of problems in our world today, but divided, we can't solve any of them. It is together, through gender equality and through people working together, that we can build a bridge to a better tomorrow. I chose to do this speech because gender inequality isn't the only problem of gender. And if this is news to you, then ask yourself this. If you're a male, have you ever been told to man up? If you're a female, have you ever been targeted or laughed at for being girly? Why is it that boys and girls cannot be into the same things without being publicly shamed? Why should boys and girls live their lives in a certain way so that they can conform to society? Why should society tell us how to live at all? Society shouldn't have any expectations of us, of me, of you, other than that which we hold for ourselves. Gender shouldn't become a label or a to-do list. And I don't want to feel oppressed for who I am or what I'm into. And that is why I chose to do this speech. Because I truly see that there is a problem with gender today. And I think that we should all be aware of this. And I think that we should all be feminists. My friend was the first person to call me a feminist. I was about 14, and we were in his room, arguing. I remember that as we argued and argued, he stopped. He looked at me and he said, "You know what? You're a feminist." And it was not a compliment. I could tell by the tone in his voice. The same tone he used to say something like, "You're a supporter of terrorism." Now, at the time, I didn't know what the word feminist meant, so I brushed it aside and continued to argue. But the first thing that I promised to do when I got home was to look up feminist in the dictionary. I am angry. Gender, as it functions today, is a grave injustice, and we should all be angry. Anger has a long history of bringing about positive change. But in addition to being angry, I'm also hopeful. Because I truly believe in the potential of human beings to make and remake themselves for the better. And this is how to start. We must raise our daughters differently, but we must also raise our sons differently. We do a great disservice to boys in how we raise them. We stifle the humanity of boys. Masculinity becomes this small, hard cage, and we put boys inside that cage. We teach boys to be afraid of fear, of weakness, of vulnerability. We teach boys to mask their true selves in order for them to become, in Nigeria speak, a hard man. In secondary school, for example, a boy and a girl, both of them teenagers, both of them with the same amount of pocket money, would go out. and the boy would always be expected to pay to prove his masculinity. What if we were not to link masculinity with money? What if the attitude was not the boy has to pay, but rather whoever has more money should pay? If we start raising our children differently, then in 50 years, in 100 years, boys would no longer be under the pressure of having to prove this masculinity. But by far, the worst thing that we do to boys by making them feel they have to be a hard man is that we leave them with very fragile egos. The more hard man a man feels compelled to be, the weaker his ego is. And then, we do a greater disservice to girls by raising them to cater to the fragile egos of men. We teach girls to shrink themselves, to make themselves smaller. We say to girls, you can have ambition, but not too much. You should aim to be successful, but not too successful. Otherwise, you will be a threat to the man. If you are the breadwinner in a relationship with a man, you have to pretend not to be, especially in public. Otherwise, you will emasculate him. Why should a woman's success be a threat to a man? Why don't we dispose of that word altogether? And I don't think there is one word I despise more in the English language than emasculation. I am expected to aspire to marriage. I'm expected to make my life choices and decisions, always keeping in mind that marriage is the most important. Now, marriage can be a good thing, a source of love, of joy, and of mutual support. But why do we teach girls to aspire to marriage, and we don't teach boys the same? We teach girls that in relationships, compromise is what women do. We teach girls to see themselves as competitors, not for jobs or accomplishments, which would be a good thing, but for the attention of men. We teach girls they cannot be sexual beings in the same way that boys can. If we have sons, we have no problem talking about our sons' girlfriends. But our daughters' boyfriends? God forbid. And yet, we expect our daughters to one day bring home the perfect husband. We police girls. We praise girls for virginity, but we don't praise boys for virginity. Recently, a young woman was gang raped in a university in Nigeria. And the response of many young Nigerians, both men and women, was, oh yes, rape is wrong. But what is a girl doing in a room with 4 boys? Now, if we can try to forget the horrible inhumanity of that response, we can see that these Nigerians have been raised to think of women as inherently guilty, and have been raised to think so little of men that the idea of them as savage beings with no control is somehow acceptable. We teach girls shame. Close your legs. Cover yourself. We make them feel as though being born female, they're already guilty of something. And so, girls grow up to be women who cannot say they have desire, who cannot say what they truly think. They grow up to be women who silence themselves and turn pretense into an art form. Now, imagine how much happier we would be. How much freer to be our true individual selves if we didn't have the weight of gender expectations. Now, boys and girls are undeniably different biologically, but socialization exaggerates these differences, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling process. What if in raising children, we focus on ability instead of gender? And what if in raising children, we focus on interest instead of gender? The problem with gender is that it prescribes how we should be, rather than recognizing how we really are. Now, gender can be a very uncomfortable conversation to have. And the fact that many men don't notice gender, or that don't notice the problems of gender, is part of the problem of gender. And because gender can be a very uncomfortable conversation to have, many would choose to close it. So some would bring up evolutionary biology and apes and say, oh yes, how female apes bow down to male apes. But the point is, we're not apes. I, for one, am a feminist. And that day, when I looked up the word feminist in the dictionary, it said feminist. A person who believes in the social, political, and economic equality of the sexes. My own definition of feminist is a man or woman who says, yes, there is a problem with gender as it stands today, and we must fix it. We must do better.